Welcome to A Peaceful Path, special education legal advocacy for families with children that have special needs.
Hello and welcome to A Peaceful Path, special education legal advocacy for families with children that have special needs. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and I am excited to welcome Michelle Becker to talk about her journey into special education law. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. I've chatted with a lot of lawyers, but this is a first for me to someone who specializes in this niche. So, can you share with us the journey that led you to become an attorney and what specifically drew you to the field of special education law?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm not surprised that you haven't spoken to a special ed attorney before. Most people don't know that we exist. And basically, that's what led me to my journey of becoming a special ed attorney. I have twin girls, and my husband and I adopted them from Romania in the 90s. They were part of those 1990s babies that were found in Romania behind the gates, behind the wall. And so we adopted them, we brought them home. We figured, we could do this. And it didn't take long for us to figure out that, 18 months of, neglect really impacts how a kid develops. Yeah. So we started them in school, and I could see early on that this was going to be a challenge. So, I did the same thing that most parents do, was talk to the school teacher, talk to the principal, and see what I could do to get my kid help. Fast forward 2 more years, there's still no help. There's really nothing. So I spent the time trying to cobble together supports for my kids. That's where I found out that there is such a thing as a special ed attorney. And so just given the process and given what I'd learned already, I said, there's a need for this. I'm going to go to law school and do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I literally made the decision to go to law school to become a special education attorney. I had the time, the resources, the inclination to figure this out. And yet it was still very hard for me. So I figured, you know what? Parents who are working 2 jobs with a disabled kid, this has got to be an impossible scenario. So I'll just do it.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, it sounds like obviously you're passionate about it. You can feel that, you can sense that, you have a direct experience with your children that came from Romania. You said they were 18 months when you adopted them?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's so sad that they that was the life of neglect. That's sad.
Yeah. And when we first adopted them, we figured, my husband and I are both educated people. This is just elementary school stuff, right? Mm-hmm. We could teach our kids. 18 months isn't that long.
Right.
But the truth is 18 months is a very long time when you're just kind of laying in a crib without stimulation.
Yeah, that's a good
point.
point.
So it's more, the thing is these disabilities, when your kid is born with a disability, when you discover your kid has a disability, at any point during the process, it becomes a mountain, and there's so much information out there, and a lot of misinterpretations of the law by parents on Facebook or whatever, just collectively trying to figure out how to help their kids. Like there's no need or intention of giving bad advice, but there's so much bad advice out there because there's just so much information and everybody's experience is different. So
and everyone's got an opinion on it.
Yeah. So having a lawyer who knows this, who's already, made the climb, knows the law, it's not that complicated once you learn it.
Were there any challenges along the way? Like in law school, what did you get any pushback from professors? Did people say, I don't know if this is a good idea, or was everyone pretty supportive of your decision to take this approach?
No, I think that the underlying feeling is that when you go to law school, you're going to be working at some big law firm and doing, big deals or, criminal law or prosecutor for the people.
Law and order type stuff.
Yeah. But the truth is, I think it feels a little, granola pro bono-y And it kind of is, but that's kind of where this all begins, right? We're talking about kids. We're just really trying to talk about helping kids. I mean, if you're going to seek justice for anyone, it would be the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So no, there was no pushback other than good luck making a living out of that.
Good luck making money. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it's so much more, right? You're not just making a living, you are literally changing lives.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So when you got out of law school and you started your practice, how did it go in the early days?
So what I did once I got out of law school, I interned. I interned at, it was kind of like a nonprofit. It was a nonprofit that kind of focused its, on education, foster kids, some of these areas that I was interested in as a way to just kind of learn how a law firm works,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do I do? Like, how do I do an intake? How do I screen clients? How do I figure out whether or not this is a case I want to take? How do I manage, a caseload? So all the things that I just never done before, I just needed to do, like, get exposed to it. So I did that internship for about 11 months. And while I was doing that, I was setting up my firm, writing the content for my website, going, in California, which is where I live. And I think that it's probably consistent throughout the country. School districts are required to have parent, school, special education information sessions. And I would go to those information sessions just to try to present my, what I knew, like be a subject matter expert for parents, not necessarily trying to get clients, but more to explain to parents what the process is, just so that they knew they had options out there for help. I remember when I sent out all of my announcements that I was opening my firm, got a lot of really good feedback. And it was, literally within 2 months, I got my first client. And then it's just been nonstop ever since.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And kudos to you for doing the internship. That was really smart. Trying to cut him a law school and be like, yeah, I'm going to start my own firm. Like that would probably be pretty hard.
Well, you just don't know how to do anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And my background is in business, so I knew how to run a company. So it wasn't like, it was just learning how to practice law.
Yeah. Yeah. The nuances of that
Yes.
specifically. Yeah, for sure. All right. So, you mentioned at the beginning when I said I'd never talked to a special ed lawyer before, you said that's because most people don't know he exists. So what kind of things are involved in what you do, specifically?
Basically, there is federal law, federal special education law. And that federal law then trickles down to the states. And then the states have their state law, which kind of conforms to the federal law. And ultimately, my job is to make sure that kids who are in the public school system are getting the services they need as prescribed by federal and state law. And wonderfully, who was ever working, case law that was kind of precedent setting in the 70s, and then over time, evolution into federal and state law basically created what I consider to be a very sound framework for supporting these kids. And my entire job is walking into a meeting with the parent and figuring out what their case is, if they have a case, and then engaging with the school district to make sure that what's missing for these kids is being provided by the school district. And I'll just give you some examples because this feels very esoteric as I'm describing it. So let's just say that you have a kid who has autism, and the kid was, identified as a kid with autism at 3, and it's time to go to school. So there's the school district is required to find all kids that are suspected of having a disability, whether they go to private school or public school, who in their community is a potential student. They are tasked as part of the law finding those kids, assessing those kids, and determining whether or not they need services. So it starts as early as 3 and ends as late as 22 years old. That's their kind of framework or their range of liability.
Mm-hmm.
So my job is to make sure that these kids get found, assessed, and supported.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really that okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Can you describe a case or an experience, that really impacted you and kind of reinforced your passion for advocating for the rights of children with disabilities?
Yeah, I'll give you my case, right? Because my case is, I think, the classic case. It happens all the time. So my kids were delayed. And as a result of those delays, the developmental delays, one has ADHD and an auditory processing disorder. The other one, she's got ADD and other stuff. and basically I went to the school site and I said, my kids are struggling with reading. They come home every day and they say, well, this kid can read it, this kid can read it, but I can't read it. So I went to the school and said, my kid is struggling, what can we do? And so typically what school sites do is they come back and they say, well, let's have a student success team meeting or a student study team meeting. SSTs is what they're called, I think, generically across the country. And, they say, oh, well, we'll try this, and this. But none of those things work and they're not effectively implemented and your kid stagnates. And this can go on. For me, it went on for a year and a half. For some parents, they come to me after like 4 years, my kid is still doing an SST meeting. Well, when you learn the law, which is the key, you find out that all you have to do is literally ask the district to assess your kid, and they have 15 days to tell you whether or not they're going to assess your kid. And then all of a sudden, you've wiped away this need for this SST meeting. It's not part of the law.
Mm-hmm.
So parents kind of churn in this SST land. Meantime, if they knew, I could ask my school, hey, could you assess my kid in writing? Could you assess my kid? I think my kid has a reading disability. They're way behind. The district could say no, but then you have rights. Or the district could say, okay, fine. But they have to say something in 15 days. Meantime, parents are doing this for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do is you delay intervention and you grind on the kids' confidence and you create behavior problems and you delay the kid in their learning. So, there should be a big sign in every, school office that says, if you think your kid has, needs to be assessed, put it in writing. Here's the form. We have to tell you in 15 days. Like, to me, they should have a big notice and help parents out. So that was the impetus of all of this. This happens more often than you know. And as soon as a parent comes to me, we can solve the problem. It's not always easy, but we could figure out how to proactively and collaboratively move forward to hook the kid up, to help the kid, and at the same time, maintain the relationship between the family and the school. Because after 4 years, the parents are pretty angry about the neglect.
Absolutely. Yeah, that relationship is fractured at that point. Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is a classic case. It's happening every day across this country.
Why is it? Do you think it's intentional to make it difficult, this process, by the schools? Do they not want to address certain things? Are they afraid too many parents are going to, I don't know, overreact to things and try to manifest things that aren't there? What do you think the reasoning is for it to be so difficult?
So a few things. I think that there is a lot of ignorance, and I don't mean that like in a condescending way. I think
Right.
that there's a lot of school-based employees that have no idea.
Yeah, if you haven't dealt with it, how could you, right?
Right.
If you
Yeah.
haven't been educated, yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. And there's trainings. I mean, that's why I would go to those meetings, because school districts and parents are invited to those like meetings where they're required to have. And I'd explain this. So I think that first of all, there is some ignorance with what their duty is. Secondly, there is a law on the books that basically says school districts can't automatically refer kids for special education. They have to try this response to intervention, which is the SST meeting. But that's only if the parents aren't asking for it, right?
Mhm.
Like if they're like doing their team meetings and they're like, Johnny here, I think he's got a problem. I think we should have an SST meeting. Okay, but you don't have to do it for 2 years. So the law is school districts can't zealously refer kids, right? Because that could be a problem too. So there's protections in place to not refer kids. Then there's the ignorance. And then I would say this kind of insistence that it's just an overreactive mom.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny's going to be fine. Just give him some time. He's young, right? Which is
And I'm sure that happens, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, school districts aren't wrong about everything. It's I think that they don't always know what to do, and even their understanding of what response to intervention looks like could be wrong, right? So there's not why I exist, right? There's not a lot of really good information out there in the public square for parents to go, oh, I need a lawyer. Like, I'm constantly surprised that parents find me, right? Because I have my Yelp page. Parents will say all the time, I read your Yelp page and I had to call you. I love that. But my goodness, how did you figure out to find me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it took me forever to figure that out. So I love the fact that parents are finding me and finding other attorneys out there that do this, but it's not commonly known. And that's, I think, if it were more commonly known, then parents would be like, I'm getting a lawyer. This doesn't have to be a lifelong struggle. And we'd solve problems more quickly for the kids.
Well, again, you can really sense your passion. It's personal. It's also, something that you feel very strongly about, and it's very cool. I'm glad people like you do exist, because it sounds like it's a much needed thing, and probably not enough advocates out there.
No, in fact, I've had potential like lawyers out there who are saying, I'm thinking about doing special ed. Would you mind if I pick your brain? No, let's go to lunch. Do you have a website? No, you can use my content. I wrote all my content myself. Use it, put it on your website, learn the law, come to an IEP meeting with me, as like co-counsel or whatever. I think that that's a big difference between what I do and a lot of special ed attorneys. I'm like, in order for you to, successfully advocate for your parents, you have to understand the case. You have to build the case. You have to know what their issues are. So I actually do go to all my IEP meetings. Some attorneys just take it at the lawsuit phase. I take it right at the very beginning phase. I go to the IEP meetings. I get to know my clients' IEP teams. It's just kind of, every lawyer does it a little different, but the truth is there aren't enough. Please come do this job. There's a lot of kids who need our help.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about what you do in future episodes. And thank you for tuning in to A Peaceful Path, special education legal advocacy for families with children that have special needs. To connect with Michelle, visit michellebeckerlaw.com and like and subscribe to our channel. We have plenty of awesome content ready to come your way. Michelle, so great meeting you. So great learning about what you do. I'm excited for future episodes.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.